your technique of exodontia, and which we are going to discuss little bit in detail. Okay. Now, what is exodontia? You might be asked. The definition is, this is by Jeffrey Ho. The ideal tooth extraction is the painless removal of the whole tooth or the tooth root with minimal trauma to the investing tissues, so that the wound heals uneventfully and the no post-operative prosthetic problem is created. Okay. Whenever you being asked the definition, you try to give a word-to-word definition which is described in the literature. Okay. This is what is expected when the definitions are asked to the students. Okay. Peterson said it is a retrieval of the tooth or the root and the tooth that are likely to fracture, or for some other the reasons they have an obstacle to the extraction. Okay. So these are the different. So the Ho's definition is most accepted. Okay. Now, extraction of the teeth is a procedure that incorporates the principle of the surgery, physics and the mechanics. Keep it in mind, my dear students. It includes the principles of the surgery. It includes the principles of the physics. We are going to discuss what are the principles of the physics and the mechanics in details. Okay. Most of the teeth can be removed intact after these principles are followed. If you know these principles of physics and the mechanics and you follow the proper asepsis and sterilization, your extraction will be uneventful. You can do any difficult extraction without any problem, any complication. It is essential to give a careful study and application of the sound surgical principles as it giving to a surgery in any part of the body. Very well. You don't leave it like it's a small procedure of extraction. Okay, because if complication arises, it may lead to the most dreaded complications. So we have to follow all the principles of surgery and asepsis and sterilization. I am going to speak for 1 or 2 slides about how to take a proper care in the COVID also. Okay. Now there are different methods of the extractions. You routinely followed method of extraction is the closed technique, that is uncomplicated exodontia, or it is also called as the intra-alveolar extraction. Okay. But if intra-alveolar extraction fails, then we have to the approach for the open method of extraction, which is also called as the complicated exodontia, or also called as the transalveolar extraction. Now, the name itself indicates closed method, means you are not using any flap, you are not raising any flap, you are just using the forceps and the elevators to do the extraction. Open method, you are raising the flaps, you are cutting the bone, and then with the help of the elevators and the instruments, you are actually removing the that particular tooth. Okay. Very important. What are the principles of exodontia? Routinely asked question in your viva. So these are the 3 important principles: the microfracture of the cortical plate, the wedge principle, and the wheel and axle principle. Okay. And we are going to discuss about the microfracture of the cortical plate, which is routinely used, obviously, and the wedge and the wheel and axle principles. Okay. Then you might be asked, what are the contraindications? Do you want to do the extraction or you want to wait? Okay. So there are relative contraindications and there are absolute contraindications. So what are the relative local contraindications? They are therapeutic radiation of the cancer. Like 6 months after radiation, we don't do any type of extraction. Teeth located in an area of the tumor, severe pericornitis and damage to the vital structures. Okay. Whenever there is an infection, we usually don't do a patient we don't post that patient for the extraction. Why? We will discuss about that. Okay. And the very important, that is systemic or the absolute contraindications, unstable systemic disease like the endocrinal, renal, cardiovascular, pulmonary or hematological. Then the patients who are under different variation, the variety of the medications, and the first and the third trimester of the pregnancy. Okay. So these are, and then the hyperthyroidism. Okay. So these are the absolute contraindications. Okay. Now, as I was talking to you about the infection, in infection usually we don't post that particular patient for the procedure. Okay. So what is the reason? Because whenever there is an infection, because of the pus or the inflammatory component which is present in the tissue, usually the local anesthetic will not act. Okay. The local anesthetic having is the pH about 7. Okay. And whenever there is an infection, the pH of the tissue goes on increasing. Okay. And in a higher pH, usually the local anesthetic dissolution will not be proper. The action of the local anesthetic will not be that effective where what it is in the normal tissue, and the patient will have pain at the time of procedure. Okay. So wait for the resolution of that particular infection, and if you really want to do the procedure, give a distant blocks. Okay. Now suppose there is an infection in mandibular central incisor or mandibular canine region, you can give a local anesthesia, what we call it as a distant block, that is inferior alveolar nerve block, and then you can proceed with the procedures. Okay. So this is how. Okay. But at the same time, you have to relieve that infection. Like say an abscess is there, you have to drain that abscess so that the pus will get evacuated and there will be a rapid progression of that particular disease. Okay. Clinical examination, whenever we plan the patient for the procedure, we have to check for the access, as I told you. We have to check the proper intraoral mouth opening, because you are the best possible surgeon, but there is no mouth opening, you cannot do anything. Okay. So access is very important. Status of the supporting structures, we discussed about this. Status of the tooth and the crown, and the status of the adjacent structure. Okay. Now, in status of the tooth and crown is very important, because whenever you feel that this particular tooth is badly carious or endodontically treated, or any having pathology like hypercementosis, or having dilaceration, or having any other problem which is related with the anatomy, what we should do is plan your extraction in such a way that you do the close extraction first, and if it fails, we have to plan that particular patient for the transalveolar extraction. Okay. So as I told you, like, checklist is very, very important. We should be planned with the transalveolar extraction, because the instruments required for the transalveolar extraction are, you need the surgical kit, you need the bars, you need the handpiece, all these things are needed. Okay. So the planning, it should be always done in such a way that you will not have any problem while proceeding for the procedure. Okay. And the preparation of the patient and surgeon is very important. The concept of the universal precaution states that all the patients must be viewed as having a disease that can be transmitted to the surgical team. Now, there are different chair side positions which are described in the books for the extraction. The position of the patient, position of the operator, and the position of the chair are very critical. So why it is critical? As I mentioned, it is a physical and the mechanical process. Okay. If the position of the patient, operator, and the chair is proper, you can utilize the maximum force in a very proper way, so that the extraction will be uneventful. The forces will not be abruptly used, and they will not be transmitted to the tooth, and the extraction will be uneventful. Okay, without breaking the crown of the or the root of the tooth. Okay, a proper chair position allow for the maximal control over the forces that is being delivered to the patient's tooth through the forceps. Okay. A correct position allows the surgeon to keep the arms close to the body. It provides the support and stability, and to keep the wrist straight enough to deliver the force with the arms and the shoulder, and not with the hands. Okay. So I described about this. If you transmit the force in a proper way, you will not have any problem for the delivery of that tooth. Okay. For maxillary extraction, all of you know, like, the position of the chair should be the maxillary plane at 45 to 60 degree angulation, and the occlusal plane of the maxilla should be at your shoulder level. Okay. And these are the different positions. When the position, like, whenever you are doing, except for the right maxillary quadrant, the position of the operator will be at 6 to 9 degrees, 6 to 9 o'clock. For the right maxillary quadrant, you will be in the 11 o'clock position. So these are the different positions which are described, and we have to follow all these things whenever we are doing the extractions. Okay. For the mandibular teeth, again, the patient to be positioned in the more upright position with the maxillary plane parallel to the floor of the mouth. Okay. And the the mandibular plane parallel to the floor of the mouth, and the mandibular plane at the level of your ankle. Okay. So that will deliver the best possible force to the tooth. Okay. And these are the different positions. You can see diagrammatically how to pinch the tooth. Here about what are the goals of the forceps extraction. The goals of the forceps extraction are the expansion of the bony socket and the removal of the tooth. Okay, that is what actually we are doing. And we are going to talk in details about how we do the expansion of the bony socket. So this is what are the principles of the forceps. The commonly asked questions in the exams are, what are the forces you are going to use? The answer should be, the first one is the apical force, the second one is the buccal force, the third one is the lingual force, the fourth one is the rotation force, and the fifth one is the traction force. Students, keep it in mind, when we are extracting the conical rooted teeth like maxillary central incisor and the mandibular premolars, you can use the rotational force directly. Okay. But in all the teeth, we have to follow this particular principle, the apical, buccal, lingual, rotation, and traction, and that actually does the expansion of the alveolar socket, and delivery of the tooth will be very easily without fracturing the tooth and without fracturing the alveolar cortex also. And you can appreciate here, the first force what we use is the apical force, and then after that we use the buccal force. So what happens when you use the buccal force? The buccal force will do the expansion of the alveolus here on the labial side, and at the same time the expansion of the alveolus here in the apical third in the palatal side. Okay. The next, when you will be using the palatal force or the lingual force, there will be an expansion on the palatal side and there will be an expansion in the labial side. Okay. So this is how the things are being the forces are used. Okay. And then after that we have to use the just a moment. After that we have to use the tractional forces, the rotational forces, and then the tooth will be delivered at your site. Okay. Now the stepwise process for extraction. What are the steps we follow? We do the loosening of the soft tissue attachment, the luxation of the tooth, adaptation of the force, removal of the tooth, and the debridement. Okay. So in the loosening of the tooth, what actually we do? We use the Moon's probe, and then we actually loosen whatever the gingiva, attached gingiva, whatever the circular fibers of the periodontium are there, they are loosened. Then we use the luxation by using the elevators. Then we do the adaptation of the forceps, and then we do the. Now this is how the application of the elevator is done. Usually the elevator is applied on the greater curvature of the root and on the buccal alveolar crest. Okay, very important. And then the forces are used to luxate that particular tooth. Okay, you can appreciate here the point of application of an elevator. Suppose it is a straight tooth root or the conical root, you can apply it on the medial side, on the middle of the tooth. If it is curved on the distal side, it has to be on the distal side, and if it is curved on the mesial side, it has to be mesial side. So what does it mean? We have to apply an elevator on the maximum curvature of the root. That is the principle in general. Okay. So here this is the maximum curvature of the root. You can apply the elevator here. Here this is the maximum curvature of the root. You can apply the root here or the elevator here. Okay. So this is the principle of the elevator. The principle of the adaptation of the forceps is also very important. There has to be a uniform contact of the forceps with the complete surface of the root or the tooth. If it is a 2-point contact or if it is a 1-point contact, as you can appreciate here in the diagram, the possibility of the breakage of the root or the tooth at the cemento-enamel junction is always there. Okay, so there has to be a uniform contact in between the beaks of the tooth and the root or the tooth, so that the forces will be transmitted properly to the tooth and there will not be any breakage of the root. Okay, and there is another technique which is described, a commonly asked question in the Viva again. What is Stobbia's method of technique? So Stobbia's method of technique is very simple words, students. You have to, whenever you want to do multiple extractions for two adjacent teeth, insert an elevator in between two teeth, and with the help of the rotational force, apply the force on the two adjacent teeth. That particular technique is called as what we call it as the Stobbia's method of technique or the Stobbia's method of extraction. Okay, and these are few diagrams how the forces should be applied. You can use the figure of 8 force whenever we are having, or this is the exact method how the forceps should be diagrammatically applied to the surface of the tooth. Okay. Now, whenever it is a sequencing of the tooth, like when you want to do multiple extractions, it is the maxillary posterior tooth which needs to be first extracted, then maxillary anterior teeth, followed by maxillary first molars, then maxillary canines, then mandibular posterior teeth, then mandibular anterior, mandibular first molars, and the mandibular canine. This is the sequencing. Again, commonly asked questions like how you will do. So the maxillary teeth will be first extracted, mandibular will be next. In maxillary, again posterior, anterior, molars and canines, and in the same with the mandibular teeth. Okay. And suppose sometimes by chance you break apical 1/3 of the tooth. So we have to be very precautious. We have to follow few policies whenever you plan to leave that particular root piece. And the first and the foremost thing is you should inform your patient and take a consent from the patient that you are informed that you are going to leave the root apex whenever you plan that. Now, what are the policies? Whenever you think that the extraction of that particular remaining root is more traumatic, say you want to remove a root piece which is in a close approximation with a maxillary sinus, and at the time of surgery you think that the risk of the surgery is more, that means the possibility of the transmission of that particular root into the sinus is more than retrieving it, then in that case you have to balance the risk and the benefits of the procedure, and then accordingly a judgment can be taken. And whenever you take a judgment, you always inform a patient that I have and mention in his case paper, and like because of this reason, the apical 1/3 or whatever the